In 2002, White Wolf Publishing was in need of a new game for the World of Darkness setting. Having embraced vampires, werewolves, mages, changelings, wraiths, hunters, mummies, the WOD was filled with every manner of supernatural creature. So to find unexplored territory, they had to look to an old friend. Welcome to 10th Circle Reviews, where we review tabletop role-playing games and accessories, both new and classic. And considering our name, it only seems appropriate to start off with this review. When Demon the Fallen was announced, it was actually causing quite a stir in the hobby. As we were on the tail end of the satanic panic of the 80s and 90s, tabletop role-playing was still whispered of in churches and schools as an express elevator to hell, being a sure path to worshiping Lucifer. Folks were honestly terrified that White Wolf would trigger another witch hunt. Giving out mock chick tracts, aping the beloved anti-classic Dark Dungeons, and posing as protesters at Gen Con did not help. Yes, this is a thing they did. Where do you think EA got the idea when promoting Dante's Inferno at E3? The game came out, thankfully wasn't noticed by the mainstream media, and introduced fans to a new, interesting, if flawed experience. You play, well, a demon. Not one of the myriad spirits or banes that populated the world of darkness before this, but an honest-to-badness fallen angel. The events that ended another White Wolf game line, Wraith the Oblivion, have cracked open the gates of the abyss, and some of the fallen have returned to Earth, possessing human hosts and finding a world devoid of the divine. Getting down to the core book, we start with a standard issue White Wolf short story, giving us an in media res introduction to the setting, following a demon who's possessed an actor who attempted suicide, finding its memories blended with the actor's and slipping into his life. I won't dole out spoilers here, but it's honestly a really nice intro to the basic concept of what the player characters will be. We then have our traditional World of Darkness disclaimer, exhorting the reader to put the book down and walk away if they have problems distinguishing fantasy from reality. We come down to our actual introduction chapter, where we get a quick rundown of the concept, a lexicon of in-universe terms, chapter descriptions, quick and dirty guidelines for live-action play, and some suggested source material. Oh, and a nice piece of art that'll give you an idea of what to look forward to. There's so many bondage angels. This is Chapter 1, In the Beginning. We're told the story of the biblical fall by way of a conversation between an adulterous televangelist and his son. His son, who was hit by a car 2 days earlier, suffered brain damage, and the demon Gaviel, who slipped right in. The conversation is honestly a fascinating one to read and does a great job of giving us the real story of the fall. Turns out the road to hell really is paved with good intentions. Chapter 2, Better to Rule in Hell, doesn't fare as well. It tells us the story of the Fallen's war against heaven, how humanity got involved, and made things so much worse when Cain invented the concept of murder. The chapter's told in first person, and narratively it's a bit of a mess. It's far from unreadable, but after the excellent opening, it's a little bit of a letdown. Chapter 3, Apocalypse Now, tells us about the abyss and how it turned angels to demons, and how they perceive the modern world of darkness. It's not a bad chapter, but it's not much to talk about either. You can only describe darkness and despair turning to bitterness and hate so many ways. There's some excellent, very atmospheric art, though. Chapter 4, Legions of the Damned, starts getting us into the mechanics of demonic existence, describing the possession process and who gets possessed. Basically, it's people who are spiritually empty. Individuals with brain damage or coma patients are the more humane options. Where we start getting darker, almost hitting early 2000s edgelord, but not quite, is when we're told that also possessed are people who are so spiritually broken, it's created a hole where the demon can fit in. People who are in absolute despair. I could get more descriptive there, but I don't want to put a stringent content warning on this video. The demon's memories and emotions mingle with the mortal host, with some memories being lost on both sides. They might remember watching Adam's first step, but they can't remember their host's work schedule. We're also told how demons sustain themselves now that they're back in the world. Raising cults, running MLMs, politics, preaching, performance, anything that can give them access to people's faith. To gain a more reliable source of faith, they can form a pact with a mortal, your basic deal with a demon. Once a pact is made, the demon can slowly feed off the mortal's faith, little by little, or take a big charge all at once, ravaging the person's soul in the process. As is standard with the world of darkness, demons get a sort of morality meter in the form of torment, lingering memories of the time in the abyss. The higher the torment, the more twisted and inhuman they become. Again, not a bad chapter, entertaining and interesting reading, but I'm still riding the high from the excellent first chapter. We also discover that no one seems to know where Lucifer himself is. He wasn't in hell, and some fallen even think that the whole war was a false flag operation and he was a double agent for God. Chapter 5, Houses of the Fallen, we actually start getting to the crunchy bits of the game. Player character options. We have 7 houses to pick from. Defilers, who were once angels of the deep, and have power over water, emotions, and some degree of shapeshifting. We have Devils, Lucifer's house. They were once angels of light, and now can command mortals and demons, along with having an affinity for fire. Devourers were angels of the wild, and command plants and animals. And they can do flesh crafting, because the world of darkness doesn't have enough handmade Lovecraftian horrors. Fiends, formerly angels of the spheres, set the stars in place and put the planets into their orbits. In a mortal host, they can teleport and manipulate time. Malefactors shaped stone and made mountains as angels. They do the same now, as well as being able to empower artifacts and maybe even create wonders. The Scourges guided the winds of creation and breathed life into living creatures. They can heal and harm with those same abilities, along with control the wind. And finally, we have Slayers, who are just what it says on the tin. They were angels of death. They can destroy, cross over into the lands of the dead, and communicate with ghosts. It wouldn't be a World of Darkness game without political factions, though, and here we're given 6 of them. Faustians look to encourage humanity's divine potential and turn it on God. Now, if they're encouraging that potential or enslaving it, depends on who you ask. Cryptics are hard to pin down. They get a rather nebulous search for knowledge, as long as it has something to do with looking for information about the fall and the abyss. Luciferians are still loyal to the Morning Star and looking for him to hopefully start the war on heaven again and be his army. Raveners are absolute nihilists. As far as they're concerned, they lost the war. The best option is to burn creation to the ground. And reconcilers regret the war and are seeking redemption from heaven, humanity, or both. Chapter 6 is character creation. It's an overall well put together process and laid out in such a way that one can easily follow along. We also get descriptions of the various available traits and skills that are available, how faith is accumulated, the mechanics of willpower, health, and experience points that are standard to all of the World of Darkness line. And finally, we're introduced to one last set of stats, the virtues: conscience, conviction, and courage. These are used to determine if an action causes a character to gain torment. Do terrible things, your GM calls for a roll on one of these, and if you fail it, you incrementally lose more of a hold on your humanity or your angelic nature. A part of character creation unique to this is designing your character's apocalyptic form. This is where they show off the form that leaves no doubt as to what they are. Mortals can go mad seeing it or devote themselves utterly to an apparently divine manifestation. At a low torment level, a demon can look very close to what they looked like when they were still an angel. As their torment rises, their apocalyptic form degrades, becoming less Michelangelo's David and more H.R. Giger's Guardian Angel. Chapter 7, we have Eyes of Fire. This is our explanation of the various powers a demon can have. Each house has 3 of these lores, in addition to their inherent abilities. We also learn that when invoking one of these powers, a demon runs the risk of the high torment version of the lore going off instead, where the power harms rather than helps. A demon can also choose to use the high torment version of a lore, with the risk of raising their torment higher. Chapter 6 and 7 together give you a pretty wide array of options for character builds, both mechanically and story-wise. Chapter 8 is simply rules. There's not much to tell here. It's the basic rules for White Wolf's storyteller system. Functional enough, if a little clunky when in combat. Chapter 9 is systems. Most of this chapter is more storyteller mechanics, but it also gives us the mechanics of harvesting faith, gaining torment, and forming pacts with mortals. Storytelling is in Chapter 10. This is your GM chapter. Guidance on running the game, a very brief look at the non-demon parts of the World of Darkness. Again, nothing remarkable text-wise, but some wonderful horror art. Chapter 11 gives us some more meat, though. Antagonists, including other demons, exorcists, hunters, and one of the more intriguing ideas here, the Earthbound. These are demons who were summoned out of the abyss before it was actually cracked open. They're bound into objects and places rather than mortal hosts, and due to that lack of a connection to humanity, most of them have gone quite mad. They're hideously powerful, have their own schemes for domination, and raise cults to their worship. I've gotten a lot of mileage out of the Earthbound and most of White Wolf's game lines, so there's some good inspiration here. Overall, Demon is a really solid start for a game line. There are some bits and pieces that got developed in later books that really should have been here, such as how the various factions interact and conflict, some more detail on how Torment interacts with day-to-day demonic activity. Would have been nice. But if you're wanting to dip a toe into the World of Darkness without getting too tangled up in the other game lines, this is a pretty solid entry point. If you'd like to pick up the book for yourself, it's available on Drive Thru RPG, both as PDF and print on demand. Next week is GMing 101, so please email your questions to infernogamingdm@gmail.com. The link is below the video here. Check out our Patreon, where you can get exclusive content, including my GM notebooks, workshops, review requests, and to start the $1 a month level, you get access to the Inferno Gaming Discord and a pre-generated character every month. This month's character is Jim Harkness for Demon the Fallen, a demonic missionary for the Lord. Finally, below the video is a link to our PayPal if you'd like to tip your GM. I don't do this to make bank. I do this because I love games. I love helping other people get into them. But folks chipping in helps cover the cost of equipment, books for review, games for streams, and when conventions are a thing again, being able to get out there and run games for charity again. Folks, thanks for joining me for this review. Thanks to our first Patreon backers, Piper Malone and Ambient, for their generous support. And we'll see you next time here on 10th Circle Reviews.